Well, it's been 2 weeks since the end of an Anvil episode on this Kennedy rifle here. And we've done a lot of work to it, and I told you guys that I would give you an update on what happened and how you take 5 years to get from this Kennedy to this 1886 Winchester, which is, you got to admit, is damn near the A Plus Ultra in terms of guns. And we're going to discuss here briefly. We're going to go over to the bench, and I'm going to show you all the things that got traded out and everything. But this gun locks up like a bank vault. This thing locks up like a marshmallow. And at the end of the day, it took that much throw to run a cartridge that was that big, and John Browning figured out how to do enough throw to run a cartridge that was that big. And I got to tell you what, this is a dramatically better gun than this is. So we're going to talk about a few things here and show you what I had to do after we got off camera. This entire project started with, I would like to have this barrel either sleeved or something. This was the barrel that was on the gun, and as you can see, it's not the world's longest barrel. It had been cut and cut and cut so many times, the magazine tube had been beat up. So that's the first thing we wound up doing. And when that got abandoned, we got another loop that holds onto the front end of the magazine tube. We got another follower. This end cap had been completely rusted in there. There was a number 10 ring shank nail that was being used in part of the firing train. This screw that holds the top on was blown up. And this screw right here, and we'll show a close-up of this thing here, was what holds the entire bolt together. The entire gun is held together with that little eeny-weeny screw. And there were several other things that had to get changed out. And I'm going to use parts off a separate Kennedy because I'm not taking this thing back apart again. I've had that gun apart so many times, I'm sick of it, and it's fully lubricated. And it does work, but I will tell you, this is one of the first couple of thousand that were made with this finger loop in it, and then they went to a full-on Winchester style loop later on in the game. This is not the most comfortable gun to speed rock off your arm. You have to do a lot of lever motion, and the feeding is kind of wonky on it. So we'll take it outside and see if we can't get 3 or 4 rounds through this thing. Anyway, there was a lot of welding that had to be done. And let's come up on a vise and take a look. First thing we had to figure out was there's a mechanism inside the bolt here that's supposed to snap in and allow that to pop back out when the lever comes all the way open. Well, it's even loose on this gun. If this gets the slightest bit loose, a shell rim will hook up on this thing going forward, tie the whole gun up hopelessly. So that was the screw we had to remake for that rifle. This belongs to a third Kennedy, and we're getting the first one back. The first Kennedy went out to a movie set in Montana with Artistry in Motion, and they did not want it converted. They wanted it to look like an old beat-up lever gun, and that's what it looked like. So when that comes back in here, I had to redo this screw for that gun also, and we'll get them all in one place. So that's one of the screws we did. And if you look at this thing, you'll see the threads are up on top, and it threads into a piece of into the latent metal that's in between that tunnel and the top, so it doesn't have a whole lot of bite. And it's length critical and how high the head is and everything. In the Kennedy that we just did, I cut the thread slightly oversized. I wound them down in there hard with red Loctite, and then I staked it. And I'm just going to pray to God the gun holds together long enough for the owner to actually get to run it occasionally. This is the cartridge lifter, and it was part of a patent improvement to try to make cartridge lifters better. So when you push down on the lever, that side gate is supposed to lift, and that allows the cartridge to come up underneath this lift, and then once that sets back down again, it has the cartridge captured. So it has less of a tendency to fly away, and then when you bring it up and you push on the front part of this with the bolt, that will kick underneath that and pop up into the chamber. At least that's the operative idea. There are several things. This is not supposed to be able to come down below horizontal. And when it does, that little edge right there catches on stuff and it causes issues. So we fixed that by folding this this edge right here down just ever so slightly. Tapped that with a hammer and kept that from coming down. This has to be tight. And on this one, this is the third gun. On this one, that screw is damn near going to come out. If I tap it on the bench top, it will come out. There's nothing holding this thing together. So we welded all that up, drilled and tapped a new hole, made a new one of these springs, or these screws, solved that. And then the other problem was the top part of this carrier here on the gun we did the episode on was worn completely to the quick. So a round would hit the back end of this and stand straight up in the air, and you'd have that jam right there where it would shove it forward and it just wouldn't go in. It was horrible. Enough material had worn off the back. There's 2 pins in this thing, and as the lever comes open, here, let me get this lined up right. This pin right here is what pushes the gate down. And then as this thing comes around the corner, this grabs it and lifts up. So this is the only thing making it come up and down. And while it's being moved up and down, there's a pretty epic spring down here on this bottom plate. So the thing either snaps to the down position to be ready to load, or it snaps into the up position in order to shove it in. So that's how that works. And we did a lot of work on the lifter on that gun, just like we're going to have to do a lot of work on the lifter on this gun. And when it's all said and done, this is just not the way to do it. And Mr. Browning figured out how to do that. All that work on this part involved a lot of welding where we had no idea what an unworn part looks like. So if I got a part here and I got a part here, and they have to move together, I can't tell you that where I have them rubbing up against each other is the correct spot. So that is now a one-of-a-kind gun, and God help us. The mainspring that was in this gun did us the favor of just clean snapping right through a flaw that was in it. What was in the gun when we tried to shoot it during the episode was this attempt at a 2-part spring with this to back it up for extra power. This is the spring that came out of the third gun we have. I have since made a single 1-part spring that I'll tell you about if we go shoot this thing. The net result of doing that mainspring mod is that this thing has got a lot of zip to it now. It did not have that positive actuation before, and it's great. You cannot load a Kennedy without the lever being all the way open. And okay, so the malfunction we had when we did this the first time, there's a finger hanging down off the bottom of that carrier, and when the carrier is all the way up, that finger has to still stop this cartridge from coming to the rear out of the magazine tube. And it wasn't doing that. So now we've got it so that it suspends that in place. And I don't even know what this thing holds, but I'm not going to load it all the way up. I don't think we have to in order to be able to demonstrate. So the cartridge goes in sideways, and it's held in place by the cartridge door here. And when you pop it out, pop down, you could hear the cartridge come to the rear, pop up, and feed. Now, I was about to shoot that without my hearing protection on, and that would have been stupid on multiple levels. We're getting into pipe organ tuning season in Charleston, and I need my ears to work. So, ejection, feed. Empty. Not bad. And I got to tell you, I'm happy, but you heard those little pipsqueaky rounds go off. A couple of years later, with the bolt shut, wrong pocket. Is that a 4570 in your pocket, or are you just happy to shoot me? 4570, this, let me make sure, there we go. Now that is what I'm talking about. Well, that was a lot of fun, and I got to tell you what, there's This was an interesting gun. I got way too far into it, but we got out of it, and it actually works. How long it's going to continue to do that, I don't know, because this gun went down 100 years ago, and this gun has run for the entire time. There's that going on too. Also, we have a beautiful example of what we're calling patina here, because if you look at this gun, it's brown, and we're looking through a layer of rust. You will see this gun again after it gets conserved. This is the original finish that's on the gun underneath all that rust. And the owner was quite interested to find out that we didn't just bead blast this thing down to zero. We've got a Bergmann Bayard we're going to do here that we are going to bead blast down to zero, and I'll show you the difference between that. But patina is just a layer of oiled rust, guys. And do the maintenance. This guy did.